You know that thing where you get an amazing pair of shoes at a really great price and want to tell everyone about it? Yeah, so do we. Here at Designer Shoe Warehouse, we'll give you something to brag about, like the latest styles from brands you love, or the trends everyone's obsessing over, or shoes that make you feel like, well, you. So go ahead, show off a little. Find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today. DSW, let us surprise you.
Close your eyes. Listen to Monday.com. Feel the sensation of an AI work platform. So flexible and intuitive, it feels like it was built just for you. Now open your eyes, go to Monday.com, start for free, and finally breathe.
Okay, so we have a special guest today, someone who we've known now for how many years now? 8 years?
A long time.
8 years. And who actually got us into doing podcasts. If it wasn't for this case, the Molly and Miller and Colt Haynes case, I mean, we had no desire to start a podcast, but after we did the television show about Molly's case, and we met Paula, and we met the family and all the other people in that area, we felt there was a lot more to be talked about and investigated about. And Paula had all this information that she presented to us, which I don't even think we used maybe a fraction of it in the television show. Because, then we decided to really kind of expand it and got really deep into it. And so, Paula, how are you? How you been?
I'm doing all right. How are you guys?
We're doing good.
Good to see you.
Well, good. It's good seeing y'all too.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to say this, though. Before we even met Paula, when we were researching cases for the TV show, I came across this news package with Paula, very, very adamantly saying that she was going to do everything they could do to find Molly. And I didn't even know who Molly Miller was because there was such a little bit of news coverage on this case. Very little news coverage. Most cases that we work on, there's tons and tons of, news reports and media coverage. But for Molly and Colt, there wasn't that much. There was only the news packages that I saw from KXII and the local news stations. And that's where I saw Paula. And that's when I was like, this woman is like crusading for her cousin who's missing. And we don't even know anything about this case. So when we started digging in and realized that there'd only been one small media thing done by, I think, True Crime Daily, but it really was Paula, your cousin Misty, and family members that were out there saying stuff more than the media. Like, I didn't see any mainstream, there was no Dateline, there was no, none of the main packages that you see for people that go missing in circumstances as mysterious as this. Right. So, Paula, you really inspired me when I first saw you because you were so adamant. You were like, we didn't start this, but we're not going to let this go. And, Molly's not a runaway. That's what the news media was carrying because that was the information they were getting from the local sheriff. So that was the only information that they were given. So that's what they were putting out there. And that was in 2013. I mean, we're talking this case is 13 years old. Right. So when we first met you, we were just so inspired by all the stuff that you had done. And, a lot of the people that we've worked with are in your position, when they can't seem to get any law enforcement help or the case just kind of goes cold and the family has to take on the case. I mean, you guys became your own investigators, and I don't think people really understand what that means.
Well, I think what also too is you learned very quickly, and you actually became the poster child for this case because you were the only one really kind of driving it to the point where, and you were working with law enforcement. You were working with Love County in the beginning, and then you were working with Carter County, and you were working with OSBI, and there were no answers coming. And in fact, you organized a lot of the searches between you, the family, and the locals and stuff like that. You did, and we were just talking about this the other day. How many searches did you do in the beginning after the months after Molly and Colt went missing?
Well, that's something I've been working on for the BIA is they need all of my information, and they need to know how many searches we conducted and this type of thing. So just between Long Hollow and Pike Road, we conducted a minimum that we come across 21 searches just in between those two areas. That's not including all the other searches that we did based off of tips that we had gotten. So we're probably looking at 30 or so searches in the past 13 years.
Does that also include the one that we came out for when we did Toby's pond?
The 21 searches? No, probably that's included in probably the 30 that we've done. We've been on I don't know, because we've been on Moxley property probably half a dozen times alone. So we're looking at 30 plus searches that the family has had to put together and do because we were unable to get anybody else to go look. You know what I'm saying? So it's been a lot. It's been overwhelming.
I mean, and that's the thing. And that's what people don't understand. It's like when you're a family member going through this and you're not able to get any help, you have to do it yourself. Mm-hmm. And so one of the reasons why we did this podcast was to help you get the message out there, to let people, know about the case, because a lot of people never heard of the case before, and then to see if we could generate more tips and more information based on what you had already done. But you had done so much, Paula. I mean, just kind of tell us a little bit about that experience after you decided to kind of jump in and help.
Well, you know, I appreciate you saying that. I don't feel like that I've done a whole lot. It's just that I've talked to a lot of people. I just filtered through a lot of tips and whatnot, and I filtered those and gave them to law enforcement to take over. You know, they are the ones who ultimately would solve this case. It wouldn't be me or somebody in my family, you know, and I knew that, but we had to continue doing what we were doing simply because if we didn't, who else was going to? Nobody had the urgency that our family had to find her. Like, no one in law enforcement had that type of urgency. That is until BIA became involved in November of 2022. Then once they became involved, then, you know, although things seem very quiet for the past 4 years, it's like, well, it hasn't even been 4 years. It's been about 3.5 years since they got involved. Even though it seemed really quiet, I always felt in my heart that there was no doubt in my mind that Vincent and his team were working diligently on this case. I met him one time at the missing persons event in Oklahoma City, my cousin Misty and I. And I knew after meeting him that we were in good hands, that Molly and Colt were in good hands, that they were going to be found by this guy. And here we are, you know.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that, because we're coming up on like almost a month since they've discovered remains after that search, and I remember it was the phone calls were pretty frantic. You know, I remember, you know, we were getting phone calls, you were getting phone calls, because we knew about the search. There was an earlier search that was done a few months earlier that they didn't yield any results, but then they came back and they went and they targeted another area, and they were supposed to only be there. They had a deadline because they were getting, permission from landowners. So they had a timeline. They couldn't be out there indefinitely. They weren't able to get a warrant, so they were able to get access to it through permission from the landowners. But then, only a day and a half into the second time, they found remains. Now, we don't know if it's definitively Molly and Colt, but it's in the right spot. It's, I believe, a male and a female remains, and then. So when we were getting those calls, and then we started calling you and you started calling us, and then just talk about what that day was like for you and what was going on, and for you both physically, emotionally. I mean, this is because I don't know how many conversations we had with you both on the podcast and off the podcast where you weren't certain if they were ever going to be found or anything.
I never thought they would be found. To be quite honest, I was to a point, I felt like we would get answers, or somebody would be held accountable. But as far as getting the remains back, I never believed that that would happen, just simply because of all the rumors that we had heard of how everything happened. We had so many, tips that were telling us various ways that they were disposed of, and if any of those were true, I didn't feel like we would ever get them back and be able to lay them to rest properly. So, yeah. What was the question? I'm sorry.
I'm just saying that day. Just talk us through that day for you. What was it like? It was like,
Okay. So I found out that they were having that search just days before the search actually took place, and on the search began on a Tuesday, and approximately 13 hours after the search began is when the remains were found. I got the first call about 2:15 in the afternoon on that Wednesday afternoon, telling me that something had been found. And so I was very hopeful, but also I was very guarded, believing that anything had been found in relation to Molly and Colt. And it wasn't until Thursday evening, I was at football practice with my grandson, that I got a call from Garrett, Molly's brother, letting me know that the BIA had been by to speak to them, and that two sets of human remains had been found in a very close proximity, apparently. So, I think you guys know how I felt, because you're one of the first phone calls I made, and I could barely speak, because it was just so overwhelming and so emotional, and just the thought that this may actually come to an end, was a lot in my mind. This is all I've known. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I mean, it never leaves my mind. I'm constantly thinking about her and what she must have went through. And so just to think that may be over, that part of it may be over, and now they can move on to holding somebody accountable for what they've done.
Yeah.
It was so emotional. I mean, I burst into tears when we got the call, because I just couldn't believe it. I mean, we've been working with you on this for 8 years.
I know.
I just couldn't believe it. I was like, when we stopped doing the podcast, because the BIA got involved, and we were so happy when they got involved, and we all agreed that let them do their job. Let's stay quiet and, step out of this. We got their attention. That's what we wanted to do. That was our goal. Our whole goal in doing this podcast was to get the attention of the BIA and the federal agencies, or someone that could help.
Yeah.
At the OSBI or OHP or whoever, just to keep the case alive. Because what happens is, they're overwhelmed. They don't have the manpower to look into all of these cases for this many years. You're talking about 13 years. I mean, we get calls from, sheriff's departments or police stations around the country and say, can you help us? Can you do look into this case? Can you put the word out there? Because we just don't have the people to do it. And I think that was one of the bigger problems with this case, is that so many things happened in that small community with the local sheriff and whatnot. And then they just didn't have anyone to really focus on it after so many years, until the BIA was able to come in and take it over, which was a miracle for us.
Right. Well, I think it was a miracle that, we conducted that search out on Toby's property in November of 2022. And we had the woman that I had called to bring her cadaver dogs down there, and she was unable to come because she was in law enforcement and she was on duty that night. But she called the guy who ultimately came out there.
Yeah.
Who I had never met. And he actually was contracted with the BIA, and he did his reports, and he would send them into the BIA. And because Molly was Chickasaw, Native American, he sent that over to the BIA, because I believe he also, if I recall correctly, he also did some work with OSBI. But he turned over his reports to the BIA. And that's when he let us know that, he would he was not going to do anything else on the case. That's when Vincent was notified about the case.
Yeah, well, I do believe, because I had a long conversation with that gentleman regarding that. And then when he showed up, he drove like 3 hours that night to get down. He got down there around 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, the night before we were we're draining the pond. And he was the second set of cadaver dogs we brought in, because we got hits with the first one, and we wanted a new batch. And I believe it was already on the BIA's radar at that point, because when he came, we had that conversation. He couldn't tell me everything, but he said, listen, this case is going to go federal. And that's all we knew. And I didn't even know what that meant. And so, and what the degree, but shortly thereafter, when we did the dig and we drained the pond and we found what we thought might have been a human tongue, after digging for 2 days and drain that pond. And it was just like, every time you drained it, it would fill back up again. And all the mud and stuff like that. And we had the medical examiner's office come out and retrieve it. They wanted us to put it in the mail, and we said, no, you got to come pick it up. And, but I believe after that moment, that's when I believe Toby got a call, and he says, you need to shut down that search now. Mm-hmm. So I think, and he said, we can't do any more searches, not on his property. And so he was on hold. So we were like, okay, maybe something's going to happen here. Someone's going to take it, because it was the first time anything like that has happened before.
Right.
Where an agency would just say, listen, you can't do that anymore. We got to preserve that. We're going to search it now, because obviously, none of us, we had a lot of, we had an active police officer there from another state, Cheryl McCullum, who's a CIS expert, and we had Maureen O'Connell, retired FBI agent, and then you had us, who we have no law enforcement experience at all, and we had you and your family, you had your son and his wife, and we were all of the wonderful guys that work with Toby on his ranch, who all volunteered to do all this. So I think that once that happened and we were told no longer to search, for me, I was optimistic. That means someone's taking this seriously, because at that point, you're talking still many years after the fact, and you realize, all right, well, maybe we have someone who's interested in looking into this case. And he in fact did get a lot of interest, and then he basically took it over. And then, like we said, we had as much confidence in him and the BIA and Lighthorse and all the people that were looking into it. And then we were like, all right, maybe it's time to back off. Because the main reason, based upon what we were talking about initially, what we saw is that, the local Love County Sheriff's Department obviously didn't do the proper investigation to get-go, because obviously there were some biases there because of Joe Russell and him being related to Khan, and he called off this chase, and then, but you even after that, you were still working with them, and then you worked with OSBI, and there was one guy who came in OSBI, and then he left, and another guy came, and there was a lot of frustration with that, because we all felt like they just wanted it to go away. There was no bodies. There was no bodies. They said there's no bodies, no crime. So there was nothing. So they wanted it to go away. And that's when obviously you even employed a private investigator, Philip Klein, who, early on interviewed a lot of the people and pounded the pavement. And then he had to, after that, it was, we really couldn't do anything that. So you were at your wit's end. We were all at our wit's end as far as that point. So, a
lot of what we did, and I'm going to speak about Philip Klein right now, because, irregardless of what anybody thinks of him or how he does his job, or personality conflicts, or whatever problem you have with him, one thing I will say is, if we had not hired Philip Klein, and we would not have a lot of the information, the interviews that man and his team conducted, with all the players involved in the very beginning, when they have fresh memories and that type of thing, we wouldn't have any of that, because there was no investigation going on. There was nobody being talked to, that to my knowledge. Now, Ronnie Hampton did a lot of those interviews as well, where we can go back to. So we have an interview with the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, and then when we have these interviews with Philip Klein, and you can read the two interviews together and see if there's any conflicts in either one of them, discrepancies in either one of the reports. So a lot of the people involved in the early days, OSBI, OHP, Philip Klein, yes, I had a lot of disagreements with the OSBI. I have spent hours and hours and hours of my life on the phone with the OSBI, but I'm sure they did what they knew to do at the time.
And just so you know, that's not uncommon. It's not uncommon. A lot of the people that we deal with, that victims people missing in their family or murders and stuff like that, there's a point when no one's held accountable, and if there's the bodies are missing, there's a lot there. Law enforcement's never going to work as hard as a family to find their loved one,
right?
And they're always going to be. And fortunately for Molly and Colt, you're not family to Colt, but the case is tied together as a result of looking for Molly and finding out what happened to her. Obviously, they were together that night. It's obvious. They were in the same car. The byproduct is that you're going to more than likely find out what happened to Colt.
Right.
So you were pushing for both, and
what I hated to ever hear, and I heard it out of OSBI, and that's where a lot of our disagreements came from, is cold case. I told them there would never be a cold case. That is just not something that we could allow, that because it wasn't cold. There was too much there that would allow them to keep looking. In my opinion, I'm not an investigator. I'm just a housewife and a grandmother and a mother, but in my opinion, there was enough in the very beginning to keep talking to people and getting these answers. You know what I mean? And don't ever say the word cold case to any family member, because when you say that, it's like you've given up.
Yeah.
So that was just very, very discouraging for me.
Well, it's the one thing that they do. They say it's cold, but then they say when you start asking for information, you want to see information, they say, well, we can't share that because it's still an open case.
Exactly.
So it's that double-edged sword that they use, which is, it's got to be frustrating for families. I know it was frustrating for you. We've dealt with it with numerous families where they say, well, sometimes families would even have to sue police departments to get the records because they knew the active police department wasn't really doing anything on it. So you're, like I said, you're a poster child for victims advocates. And I know this has been super hard on you, Paula. It was super hard on you in the beginning because you were getting raked over the coals on social media in that small town that you don't live there.
No.
You never lived there. Your family there, and the fact that, you were chastised because all you were doing was trying to find answers to what happened to Molly. And so I just want to put that out there. People don't know this, but it's really easy for people to criticize people online, and they get very courageous behind their anonymous Facebook accounts and start lambasting people because they're throwing people out. But unless you've walked in a family member's shoes who's been through this, and now it happens every day, and sometimes some of these cases you hear about, and a lot like the Savannah Guthrie's mother case, which just blew up, and they still don't know what happened to her. Down to like thousands and thousands of other families are dealing with the same thing and are getting no results, and they're just a case file on someone's desk. Because I know I know the BIA's case file load is huge, and the fact that they took the time over these past 3.5 years to really look into it and follow up on all the leads, and kept quiet about it, just quietly worked on it, and then get to this point where, like I said, we haven't fully identified the remains yet, but based upon what we've been hearing, that it was fairly close to where the car was that was discovered. And when you look at that, it says 0.6 of a mile, but when you look at all that property, that's pretty close. So I just want people to understand that no one's gone through what you've gone through, and Molly's family and Colt's family, and the fact that you might have some answers to this it's a gift from God.
It is. And what you said about that made me kind of emotional. I'm a thick-skinned person. I take what a lot of people say with a grain of salt, but it really does. It does eat at you over time. When you're being raked over the coals, like I have been, and saying that I'm in this for other reasons. I didn't disrupt my life for this long because it was fun, or for the attention or anything of that nature. You know what I mean? I did this because Molly deserved to be found. Molly and Colt both deserve to be found. That is one thing I'm not supposed to speak on, is Colt, but they both deserve to be found. And so therefore, for anybody to think I'm in it for any other reason than just to get answers it's just beyond me why they would think that about me, because I'm not like that, So I'm going to get off that soapbox.
Okay.
Well, no, and it's true, and that's the part that gets frustrating, because we know you, and we've seen what you've gone through just in the past 8 years. This has been going on for 13 years. This is a long time to deal with something like this traumatic, and it's a daily thing. It was a daily thing. You were getting tips on a daily basis. I mean, thousands and thousands and hundreds of tips, and people just reaching out and saying, well, I saw this, or I heard this. I mean, it was a lot to deal with. And when you're looking for someone you love, no one has the right to judge you. I mean, that's just crazy. And those people need to really look in the mirror, because God forbid it ever happened to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, to me, when I saw that news clip of you, I was just like, I just felt for you. I just couldn't believe what you guys were going through. I just didn't. And the fact that, Molly's case didn't get any attention. Is it because she was Native American? Is it because she was, hanging around people who were in, a drug culture? Is it because she wasn't a blonde college student? That always bothered me too. Like, why didn't her case get the attention that it deserved? Is it because she was Native American? Which I think a lot of it had a lot to do with it. There's so many women in that position that we never even know about. And
we had 30,000 members on Molly's page, and we would have media campaigns where a certain day of the week we would bombard NBC, Dateline, 2020, all these different shows with emails until I got a phone call from somebody at one of these TV shows telling me that we're basically on the verge of harassment, what we were doing, because people were emailing the crap out of these places.
But they weren't interested.
The attention that, and the thing is, they may not have did a show on it, but they knew who Molly Miller was at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Because they did their own
exactly. And now everybody will come out of the woodwork because remains have been found, and now everybody will jump on the bandwagon. But at the end of the day, the point is that if it hadn't been for that noise, if it hadn't been for those 30,000 people on Molly's page, if it hadn't been for you and Molly's family and Colt's family out there searching in the beginning and pushing for vigils and pushing for media attention, we would never know about this case.
I know.
Yeah.
So, I'm just grateful that, the BIA, I do know Vincent with the BIA, he listened to the entire podcast. That is part of the reason he got involved with this case to the extent he did was because of the podcast. Is that not correct?
I know he listened to it, so that much I know. I don't know whether that was a final result, but I think, like I said, I think he was aware of the podcast. I'm sure I don't know if he's listened to the whole thing, but, we got, I think the podcast created local awareness, because most of the people that listen to the podcast, I mean, although there was a lot of people worldwide that listened to it too, but I think the fact that a lot of people in Oklahoma and Texas were listening to it, and then that really helped. And whether or not,
and that's the whole point.
Yeah,
I mean, the whole point was to get attention, and we got it. We got the attention of the people we needed to get the attention.
Yeah,
and thank God it was Vincent, and he was just determined and really stuck with it, and that's why we backed off and didn't want to continue the podcast, because we got what we needed. We got the attention of people that could help, and now here we are. So now there's remains, God willing, it's Molly and Colt, and they'll be identified hopefully.
So everybody can have a proper burial, and they can put them to rest. And, I mean, regardless of what happens with the case, I remember you saying early on, I don't care if they ever find anybody who's responsible for it. You just wanted to bring her home. And I'm sure Colt's family wants to bring him home. So at this point, if it's them, that's a huge victory.
Oh, I agree. And, throughout the last 12 plus years, there's so many people out there to thank for all the help that they have given us over the years, to search and rescue organizations, to local and federal and state law enforcement. There is just so many people that are going to have to be thanked once this is all said and done, and we've got the final say on whose remains these are.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Looking to transform how you work out? At the Sculpt Society, we have workouts for every stage of life, from pregnancy and postpartum to perimenopause and midlife. We offer life stage fitness programs, expert-led nutrition, and thousands of classes that help you enjoy movement and feel strong at every stage, all from home. Use code MEGAN30 for your first month free on thesculptsociety.com. That's thesculptsociety.com. And start wherever you are. A release is waiting.
Hey, want a cookie? Oh, I know you just ate, so you're craving something a little sweet. Besides, one cookie isn't gonna kill you. How about half? Just a bite? Bite it. Bite it. Bite it.
Food noise isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. Your affordable GLP-1 source that puts you on a path to successful weight loss by quieting food noise.
Bite it.
Shh. Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
Marvel Television's Wonder Man, an 8-episode series, now streaming on Disney+.
A superhero remake, not exactly what we'd expect from an Oscar-winning director.
Action! Simon Williams, audition for Wonder Man.
I'm gonna need you to sign this, assuming you don't have superpowers.
I'll never work again if anyone found out.
My lips are sealed.
Marvel Television's Wonder Man. All 8 episodes now streaming, only on Disney+.
Yeah. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and just what was really touching is when the Chickasaw Nation, they actually released a press release, and they released a photograph and of all the standing around. There was someone, I believe it was Vincent, on top of this truck, and he was overseeing a bunch of people, and there was tons of volunteers and rescue people and tech people, and just to see that from an organizational standpoint, that was heartwarming, and it should give everybody hope that when you put your mind to something like that, and when you get attention and you never give up, that hopefully you can find someone to believe in the case to where they're not going to give up. And I think that's exactly what happened. So couldn't give any more credit to all those organizations: Chickasaw Nation, the BIA, Light Horse PD. There was people from Texas Search and Rescue there. There was people from the DOC. I mean, they really put together a team that I don't think, from what I know about Oklahoma, I don't think it's ever been done before at that level.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it has not. I would like. I look forward to hear more about how that all came about, that search, and the organizations that were involved in it. We do know through the news, she went out there, Caroline with KXI went out there, and the organizations that were there, that's how we know they were there, was because of her and the news. So I really would like to hear more about how that all came about, because they didn't. I mean, 13 hours into a search, I know the terrain out there, and even though 0.6 of a mile seems very close to where the car was, there's no way they could have walked that because of how thick the brush was and all the thickets and the ravines. They would have walked across a very deep, very wide ravine to get to that location.
Yeah.
And how they came about to where they were searching. It's been said before that the land that the remains were found on is not land that we've ever searched. Now, I've been on the land. I went when the land was abandoned and before it sold. Nobody was living in the house on the land, and a friend of mine and we went to this land. We walked to the east, a little distance behind the house, but we saw remnants of where wild hogs had been. We kind of got spooked and we got out of there. That's as far as we've ever been on the land. So we were never denied access to that land. The previous landowner was a local, and he had given permission to be on there anytime we needed to. But that particular land is not land that I particularly thought they would be, in the direction that where they were found. It was actually to the north and west of the car. And in my mind, and this is just how ignorant I am to the whole investigation, how things work, in my mind, I pictured them going off pretty much northeast, trying to get back to where the direction that they came from. So for the remains to be found where they were, I want to set that straight, because the landowner of the particular land, now we have been denied access to some land out there, but this is not the land that we were denied access to. So I see a lot of rumors being talked about on the internet regarding that, but that's not actually true.
Yeah. No, and I believe they had an issue getting onto the land that they found the people, the remains on too. I mean, because it was bought by someone else.
Right.
And so they had to get permission. A lot of people gave permission. It took them a lot of effort to get permission from this one, because that person didn't live in the state and didn't want, teams trampling all over his land. He didn't, who knows? I mean, there was liability issues and stuff. That's why they couldn't get warrants. So the fact that they didn't give up on trying to get on that land and really pursued it is great. It just meant that, they were going to do everything they possibly could to search the areas that needed to be searched.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but, like I said, though, what led them there, what led them to that particular land is going to be interesting to eventually hear, one of these days. It's like, were they just doing a grid search and they happened upon them after 13 hours of searching, or did there's speculation as to why Department of Corrections was out there, and if that was because they had an inmate out there showing a location of where they could possibly be. I don't know. I don't know the answer to any of it.
Yeah, it could have just been to me, that's like an intervention because it's such a needle in a haystack. You know, it's some sort of God intervention, because if it was just a grid searchers, I mean, if anybody, you know, I've never been on one, but I've had it explained to us by federal agents. It's methodical, but it is, you know, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough.
We had a grid search, but we had it over on some state land where we had gotten a tip. And we had client investigations there, and we also had some search and rescue organizations there. And we did a grid search with the arm in arm, you know, and they wouldn't allow me to be a part of it. I just had to watch. But they were arm in arm and just methodically going through the wilderness, you know, and it was incredible, you know, but that's the only time I'd ever even witnessed anything like that.
Yeah, so the search was obviously an amazing thing. We'll hear more details, I believe, as this progresses and the investigation continues, because I can't imagine that they're going to stop now that they found remains. They got to find out if the remains are Molly and Colt. But something tells me that they're going to continue investigating this stuff now because they have stuff to work with. But I mean, how's everybody taking this? I mean, your family, your friends. I mean, I know it's caused a lot of conflict, this whole thing internally, and I know that that's horrible, and it happens. I mean, you know, when traumatic things happen like this. So, I mean, what's the aftermath been like?
Well, I haven't spoke to Molly's immediate family. I did text her mother and let her know that I was thinking of her, and we text back and forth. She's doing okay. She feels relieved, mostly, she said. But I haven't really spoke to anybody else other than Garrett when he called me and told me that they said some human remains had been found. Now, as far as mine, I was raising my granddaughter, who is now 19 years old, when we got the news that Molly and Colt had been found, or that remains had been found. And when I called her, I've never seen, I basically went to her knees, because she was just 6 years old when they went missing. And she's lived this, you know, and she's been out on searches with me. And so she hit her knees, you know, and just cried and cried and cried, because she kept saying, "Granny, I'm so happy for you, and I'm just so relieved." And my kids, they're all very invested in this being her as well, and just so relieved themselves, you know. So we're just waiting for the news, just like everybody else. But I have a good feeling that this is Molly and Colt, and hopefully everybody will have some peace. I don't know if there's ever going to be closure, but there will be peace, I hope. That's what I pray for.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine how everyone's feeling. I mean, when we met Garrett, you know, he loved his sister so much, and he was so devastated by what had happened to her. And he got mad about the podcast, you know, here and there and whatever. But we always felt for Garrett, always.
Oh,
because we knew
I know y'all thought a lot of him.
that he was heartbroken, and we were trying to help. And I understand when someone's going through something like that, you can't even imagine what he was going through. I really can't. And so we're really happy for him that hopefully this will give him some answers to what happened to his sister, who he loved so much. And hopefully they get answers, because I can't even imagine going 13 years and not knowing what happened to my loved one.
Yeah. I think just from what I've heard, I've heard that he is struggling pretty hard with all of this.
I can imagine.
Oh, I can too. Bless his heart. You know, he adored his little sister, and I think he takes on a little bit of the responsibility, which I wish he didn't. But you know, it is what it is. It's what people do. I think we all want to take a little bit of the blame for what's happened here. You know, but in the end, it wasn't our fault. You know, it wasn't our fault.
I mean, things happen, and it happens so fast. And that's like young girls, they don't realize, you know, you get in a car, you're hanging out. Who are you hanging out with? What are you doing? What, you know, you're young. You don't think anything bad's going to happen.
17 years old.
You don't think anything bad's going to happen. When I talked to Molly's best friends, you know, when we were doing the show and the TV show I mean, they all said, like, look, we were all partying all the time. Like, that's just what kids do. Like, no one ever thought something like this was going to happen. And that's the thing that's so tragic, because you don't think like that, you know, when you're out doing things when you're young.
Yeah.
And, you know, the thing that always struck us with this case, because I mean, it's so mysterious. 3 people are in a car. It goes into the woods. 2 of them never seen again. But the next day, the fact that Molly was still alive the next day, because at first I was like, well, you know, maybe they died in the woods. Maybe something happened in the woods, you know? And then once we started learning more about the case and knowing that they were making all these phone calls, and that the phone records and the statements from people that were out there looking for them in the middle of the night. And then the next morning when Molly was still calling people and still trying to get a ride. So that theory just kind of went out the window for me. But it always still sticks with me. Like, she was alive the next day. Then what happened? Right?
You know, since the remains have been found, of course, that just brings out the big old box full of paperwork. You know, you start going back over everything, seeing what you missed or what might be of use and that type of thing. Well, the phone records that Jody Barth did for us, where she put them in chronological order: Con's phone records, Jennifer's phone records, Molly, Colt, Rob Nichols, all of the phone records that we have. How she put them all together in chronological order based off of the time that all the calls were being made. The amount of time and effort she put in it, I can't even thank her enough, because it just makes it so easy to read. So I was going back over the phone records, and I've been reading on the 4 people who went out looking for Molly and Colt that morning, and they went over to Con's house. I went back on all of their interviews that they've done. And so I was reading up on this stuff, and I went back to the phone records and I looked, and I could almost pinpoint the time that they were at Con Nip's house. I believe it was 7:22 in the morning when they were at Con's house. So I went back started looking at Molly's phone calls, and just minutes after they left there, or not long after they left there, and they're back out looking for Molly and Colt. Molly and Colt's phones start just ringing at Con's house, you know, on Con's phone, and he will not answer the call. And it just broke my heart, because I know what she's doing. She's out there by making all these phone calls. She's just begging for help, and he's not responding to her, you know. And so it's very difficult to see all that and know what they were doing up to the minute that their phones stopped making phone calls or getting incoming phone calls. At 9:39 a.m., her phone just never received or made another phone call.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to watch that.
Yeah.
Know the time frame of when they could have been out of there, knowing when these guys were out looking for them, and the time her phone went dead. And
yeah, I know. And this is all information that's been explored by law enforcement before, and it's been explored by us in the podcast. I mean, we've talked about this, you know, ad infinitum. So it's just like those crucial moments in the beginning. Like they said, that hit series first 48, those first 48 hours are the most crucial. And they were right in the middle of it, and they were trying, based upon those phone records, was trying to get someone attention to come out to them. There was even reports to where those 3 people who went up to Khan's house. Later on the next day, they got a call from them, Khan or Colt or Molly, saying they got picked up.
Mm-hmm. That's what the report. That's what the interview said. Yeah.
Yeah. So what does that mean? So we know they weren't like out in the woods. If they got picked up, they either got picked up by an all-terrain vehicle or a truck, or maybe they were out in the road and someone picked them up. So, what happened then?
The report also says that the person who was out there, he actually got out of the vehicle, wandered off over the fence in trying to walk out there to try to find them. And when he came back to the car, he stated that he heard horses and
ATVs.
ATVs, yes. And so that's when he kind of got spooked and got out of there. So, and then it was shortly after that they got the phone call from Colt saying, "Never mind, we got out of there," or "We're getting out of there. We got a ride." I really don't remember how it was stated, but irregardless, they're saying somebody came out there to rescue them.
Mm-hmm. Well, that kind of if that in fact is true, that kind of eliminates the dying from exposure.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So,
yeah, I can't imagine that being the case, but I guess we will find out once the medical examiner finishes with what they do. I don't know the process. I do know they said it would be 2 to 10 weeks, and we're about into the 4th week.
Yeah. I think even after that process, no matter where I think they're going to sit down and figure out how to disseminate this information, whether or not they're going to release it at all.
Right.
Especially if they're actively looking into this case again, with a lot of veracity. So it's just amazing that we're even talking about it at this point, because when we stopped the podcast, after doing like 55 episodes, we had this conversation with you and other people, and we're like, where else can we go to just kind of keep things going? But the good news is people are actively engaged with this case now. They're going back to the beginning and they're re-listening it. And we've had to go back and re-listen to stuff because it's so much information that we can't digest it all. So we're trying to figure out, we're retracing our steps, going back through all the information that you shared with us and the stuff that we discovered and all these tips, and just seeing if there's any kind of correlating factors. I think it comes down to the same conclusion. I mean, it's just like you can't, to us, it's like 3 people go in, 1 person comes out. It's like, what happened?
Yeah.
The only person that really knows, could possibly know, and who says he doesn't know, should more than likely know.
Right.
So it's crazy.
Well, we're just grateful that the BIA took it on and was able to get some movement here, and pray that it is them.
Oh, yeah. I think hopefully we'll know within the next 4 weeks. Somebody asked me if it was hard waiting. I said, well, that's all I've known for 12 years. So, I would like it to go faster, but I want it done right too. So
exactly. I mean, after all this time, it's like this kind of waiting's nothing in comparison to what you've had to endure and the family has had to endure.
Well, before this, we had no hope. Now, at least there's a glimmer of hope that, there may be an end to this. So.
Yeah. I mean, when we stopped the podcast, we were like, this is the only hope we've had when they took it on.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully they're going to be able to find the answers. When the BIA took it on and we realized, like, we don't want to get in the way, shut everything down, let them go. And look where we are now. I mean, it's a miracle.
I know.
So, you gotta know when to be quiet and you gotta know when to speak up. And had you not spoken up for the years that you did, and had we not done these things, this case, no one was paying attention. Mm-hmm. No one was paying attention. There was nothing in the media. Like you said, you were harassing the news.
We were harassing media.
media, and they didn't want to be bothered with it, right? Nobody was paying any attention. So sometimes you got to make a lot of noise in order to get attention.
Well,
So
that's what I told the guy when he called me and told me we were on the verge of harassment. I said, well, now you know Molly Miller's name, don't you? So,
right.
So, they can call it harassment or whatever they want, as long as they know Molly Miller's name.
I can't believe a producer would say that to you. That's
exactly what he said.
I know. I just think I would never say that to someone. I worked in the news. I would never. I mean, it's a victim's family. I mean, it's like, that's the thing. It's like, until you've experienced something like this, or you've had any kind of tragedy in your life, you really can't understand what it must be like. When we talked to Mr. Kessie with Jennifer Kessie's case. I mean, all these cases that we've working on two right now, where the family is just devastated for answers. And it's like, what else can they do? If there's not an organization to help victims' families for missing people that are really going to investigate these cases, because local law enforcement, they just don't have the manpower. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the tools. So if we don't have a specific agency dedicated just to this, and you don't have anywhere to go, what are you supposed to do?
I know. And thank God for you guys. I mean, I've done a lot of interviews at this point, and dealt with a lot of producers and a lot of podcast people and stuff. And I've never had a relationship to the extent that I've grown to love you guys and love what you do. And the way you don't do this out of anything other than you absolutely do care. And for anybody to think otherwise, it's just crazy. I mean, I'm a pretty good judge of character, and I think you're both pretty awesome.
Well, you've inspired us so much.
Yeah.
You have no idea. I mean, you've been a total inspiration, and as have all the other people that have been in your position that we've been lucky enough to meet. I mean, we're just grateful that you allowed us to tell your story. Because
it's just not Molly and Colt's story that or family that you've gotten so involved in. You've gotten every case you're still talking about every case you've ever done. That's people that really care about what they do and the families that they're dealing with. You know what I mean? And so that's hats off to you guys for what you've done and what you're helping people do. And I hope with Noah Prescrow case, I really hope that what you're doing really helps them as well.
That's a whole nother story. But yeah, I mean, we pray for them every day, and because that's a complicated one as well. And but what I think is really interesting is just that what you stand for, as far as kind of, like I said before, the poster child for a victim's family advocate. I mean, you didn't want this on yourself. I mean, and to me, I go back to a lot of the online hate that happens when people who are like yourself and like us, I mean, because we get it every day too. I mean, people lambast us all.
I don't care.
I don't really. I mean, it's like, we know what we did. We know what we contributed, and to keep this thing, out there, and whether or not it had any kind of bearing on what happened a few weeks ago, if like just the getting the attention to keep it alive, if that's all it was, then that's enough for us. I mean, we just want to make sure that there's some sort of resolution. And we honestly, like you said, we had no clue of it. I mean, it was an incredible, crazy ass story that happened. Every time we look into it, and every time we talk to all the people, every time we would go over the interviews, every time someone would give us a tip, because we got tips right from the beginning when we started doing the podcast.
People were finally starting to talk. I mean, they were like, oh, we can talk and no one will really know it's me or whatever. And they weren't scared to talk anymore. So that was good.
Because everybody's afraid to get involved in these things. Right. They want to help, but they don't. I mean, how many times have we've gotten, tips where they said they won't even give us our name, and they said, I'm just saying this because I have to. They'd be crying on the phone because I'm putting my family in jeopardy, and I'm like, what is going on down there?
Yeah, I have my great, like my mother's family. They had roots in Oklahoma. Many, many, many years ago. I didn't grow up there. I never lived there. But we did have family that had roots there way back, 1800s, whatnot. And, I passed through there a few times. I never had a clue what the culture was like until we started digging into this stuff. And I was like, I came from a small town where it was very corrupt on Long Island. A friend of mine was wrongfully convicted of murdering his parents when I was a teenager. I know what corruption looks like. I saw it right in front of my face as a teenager. And then when we started looking into this, I just couldn't believe what was going on. And I felt like if we don't say something, it's just going to continue, and more people will go missing and more people will die, and no one's paying attention because no one's covering these cases. So that's, for us, that's what really sparked this in the beginning for me, after meeting you and talking to you and just seeing everything that you had to go through as a family member, which is crazy.
Just because you're asking questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all you were doing. You were asking questions.
Yeah. And I probably would have never gone as far as I did, as far as getting involved, but, I keep hearing Molly's mother's voice in my head when she was screaming into the phone, "They hurt my baby, they hurt my baby," and I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, "I need you down here." And I showed up the next day, and I don't feel like, I've said this before, mentally, I've never left there. I'm there mentally all the time, but I don't think I would have been able to continue if I didn't. I've had my moments, throughout the years. I've had the want to give up and want to just stop.
And you've also had betrayal. You've also had, a lot of heartache. There's a lot of things, people that you entrusted, you got betrayed by, and people who you thought were trying to help weren't actually trying to help. And so, because everyone had their own agenda, and your only agenda was to find out what happened to Molly.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what happened there. And, that happened on a couple of different occasions. And I really became very close with some people. And that it truly breaks my heart that we are where we are now, that we can't even pick the phone up and call each other because of this. But, it is what it is. You get in there and you trust some people who think it got your best interests at heart. It's just amazing. It really is amazing to me.
Yeah, it's shocking, to be honest.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine taking advantage of someone in the situation that you guys are in and using it for my own benefit. We don't, like you said, it's hours and hours of work to do a podcast. We're not doing it for the money.
Yeah.
We're not doing it for any kind of, for us, it was just, we wanted to do something to help, and we wanted to do something that could for me, really was watching you, what you were going through. And I just felt it was wrong. As a journalist, as a producer, as someone who's always been about telling the truth, I just felt what was happening was wrong. And Rob and I would talk about it and say, all we can do is just try to shine light where nobody wants to go.
Keep talking about it.
So you just keep talking about it.
And it's not just talking about the same stuff. It was basically following up on leads and exposing those leads and going through all the information that you collected. And because it really, I can't stress this enough to our audience, is that the amount of information that Paula accumulated over this time period, I don't know, because we're talking thousands and thousands of documents, recordings, and all this other stuff that we only scratched the surface. We only used a tiny little bit for the podcast, but there was so much legwork and crazy legwork. I can't even, it's like case files. We've done that before. We looked through case files, and we just gotten through and looking through 1,850 pages of FBI files on this other case, and it's just yours dwarfs that. So
that took a lot of time. That took a lot of time, but I'm glad I have it. You can't remember all this stuff, and that's something that anybody else going through anything like this is keep good records, and keep it organized, and which I did not, because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I'm not as organized as I could have been. And so a lot of it's hard to find now that it's needed. And so, but I'll get there.
Oh, Paul, you did a great job. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of papers and thousands of documents and thousands of tips. And I mean, I went through it's amazing.
We would spend a weekend just going through leads and just say, did you ask them to follow up on this? We go, yep, I asked them to follow up on that one.
And
yep.
you would remember things that I don't even know how you remember everything.
Well, that memory's gone. I can't remember it near as well as I did 5 years ago. My goodness, I think COVID did a number on my brain.
You're just full. That's why I call it. When you can't, you're just full.
Yeah,
there's no more space.
I am.
Well,
Paula, it's been a journey.
It has been a journey. It's not over. That's the good news, is it's not over.
But this is huge. I mean, this is definitely a miracle that they even found remains in that area.
Yeah. Well, I feel relief. I also feel a little bit of anger, but mostly relief. I think it is. I pray that they get answers, and Molly and Colt get justice for whatever happened to them.
Yeah, exactly.
So
absolutely,
it'll just take some time. Got to be patient.
Gotta be patient.
I can be patient.
All right. Well, listen, thank you for taking the time to share. I know this is hard for you. I mean, you've been going through a lot, and you're not as available to put yourself out there with it. But I think it's important that people understand what you've gone through and what it means for this to happen at this point in time.
Yeah.
Because it's a tiny victory in this huge mountain of chaotic case that has been going on for so long.
Right. Well, I thank you guys for everything.
Of course. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Paul, we'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.